So today we're going to talk about theft, how to avoid theft in China, but not only China. I'd say this applies to most places in the world. And there are a couple of things I need to get out of the way first here. Number one, my voice. I sound like this because I've been terribly sick for the past 2 days. China does this to me. I don't know what it is, but at least once, usually once or twice a year, I just get like terribly sick. It's annoying because I'll be, in good health, and then all of a sudden, bam, no warning, nothing, and then I'm bedridden for 2 days or 3 days. Anyway, I'm almost back. Number two, I'm giving you guys this advice based on my own experience. Now, I could be wrong in some aspects, so, it's up to you to decide, use your own logic at the end of the day, whether you'd like to believe me or not. But I've had a lot of experience with crime and theft, especially growing up where I grew up, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. So, a lot of what I'm going to say here is common sense. But I find that my friends who come from very safe first world countries tend to lack a lot of common sense when it comes to theft and crime. I grew up in South Africa, which is one of the worst countries when it comes to crime. Or maybe I should say one of the best countries because it's so good at crime and it happens so much. But in South Africa, crime is rampant, absolutely everywhere in the country. It's a terrible situation over there. A lot of it doesn't make it to mainstream media, but if you'd like to go and just do a search about the current sort of genocide against farmers in South Africa and that kind of thing, it's pretty bad what's going on there and what has been going on there for the past, well, pretty much forever. But theft and petty crime, it exists in spades in South Africa, but you're more likely to get murdered and raped and things like that. And when it comes to theft, everybody that I know has been and this is not an exaggeration, I mean everybody that I know in South Africa has been subject to some form of theft. It's usually in the form of a house burglary. A family goes out for dinner or something, comes back, the house has been broken into and ransacked. This is incredibly common. It has happened to just about everybody I can think of offhand. Or something like a home invasion. While you're at home, they break in, they take stuff, maybe kill somebody, maybe rape somebody. This does happen very often. It's happened to my own family, and of course plenty of friends. A hijacking, I've had attempted hijackings on myself. My sister has been hijacked, where the guy stuck a gun in the window and stole her iPod and everything off of her and told her to get out the car, that kind of thing. Luckily she escaped anything worse. And of course just about everybody I know has had their car broken into or their house broken into or whatever. So I'm very experienced when it comes to theft. So I'd like to talk about the kind of theft that you can expect in China, and we're going to be focusing on one main area, and that is theft of opportunity and pickpocketing. Now, you get different levels of theft, of course. You get these proper thieves that plan things out. They plan like a heist, or they plan to break into a house or a home invasion or whatever. We're not going to really be talking about that in this episode. What I want to talk about is theft of opportunity. As an aside, we're going to talk about pickpocketing as well. Now, think about it. I think everybody's capable of being a thief, pretty much, an opportunistic thief, I should say. And we're often sort of faced with this choice. I mean, for instance, if you see somebody sitting at a table and they stand up and they leave their phone on the chair, or they leave a $100 bill or something, it's really up to you whether you're going to go over there and take the money or take the phone and keep it for yourself, or, shout after the person and say, hey, you left your phone here. And that, I'd say, is a theft of opportunity, because yes, you are a thief if you take that for yourself. You're stealing from somebody. And I had this opportunity recently, for instance, in Japan. When I went to Japan, I was in the bathroom and somebody had left their Google Nexus phone in the bathroom there, in the stall, like on top of the hand dryer or whatever. So right then and there, I had the opportunity to get myself a brand new Google Nexus phone, which, I kind of like it. And it's Japanese, and that's cool, and it's something I personally would like. But of course, I'm not a thief, so I took it to the lost and found. It's in a video that I made. Taking a sip from the cup of awesome. It's actually just really strong coffee in here. Wow, is it strong. Anyway, now, it's basic common sense to avoid these thefts of opportunity. Things like, don't wear your wallet in your back pocket, but some people still don't seem to understand that if you're going to travel, especially to China, that is not a good idea. Just the other day, 2 months ago, I was up in Beijing, or whenever it was. I was on the train, there was this big fat German guy, and he had his wallet in his back pocket, and he was being chatted up by these sort of attractive young Chinese girls. And I was just sitting there, and they were speaking their broken English to him, and I could see it was a trap. Because as they were talking to him, this other lanky little dude was creeping up to the back of him, ready to grab his wallet. And I stepped in the middle of the two. I looked at the guy, and I turned around to the German guy, and I said, "Hey, don't keep your wallet in your back pocket." This guy just almost took it. And he was completely taken by surprise. He wasn't expecting that, And the thief guy just kind of melted back into the crowd. And the girls, when the German guy turned around, they'd also disappeared. So you see, here's a theft of opportunity, but it's also kind of a bit of a setup over there, And that's another thing you have to watch out for. I've also been a target of this, but it doesn't work for me. If people out of the blue start trying to attract your attention, it's usually because they've got an accomplice who's going to come to the side and try and, take something from you. In fact, I have a funny story from back in South Africa. Now, I used to have this old 1966 GTO, and the worst thing I ever did in my life was sell it because it was the only one in South Africa. It was anyway, not going to get into that, but it was a convertible. Well, not really, it had the roof chopped off. So I'm driving down, and I stopped at a traffic light, and a beggar came to my left side to ask me for some money. And this was at night time, so it's kind of dark. And the beggar, young beggar, and he's just basically the usual thing is very common in South Africa. He's asking me for money and things like that. And while he was doing that, his accomplice had snuck around the other side of the car and reached down and tried to grab what he thought was something valuable on the passenger seat. Now, those old American cars, they've got those big GM sort of belt buckles, they're silver. So there's this big sort of square glinting silver thing on the passenger seat, and he thought it was some kind of valuable thing. And he reached for it, and he grabbed it, and he tried to pull it so hard, and of course it's a seat belt. So, it got stuck, and it yanked out of his hand so quickly, he got such a fright. It hit the floor. I reflex just had my gun out, what's going on? And the guys ran off in both directions. It was actually quite hilarious. End of the story, nothing got stolen. But it's that whole sort of distract and, you have an accomplice. That was really funny. Anyway, it's happened to me here in Hong Kong, actually, not even in mainland China. I was in Hong Kong, and some guy who was, he was a white guy. He had a Chinese girlfriend, it seemed, and they were both high, definitely high on something. And this was his mistake, was because he was so high, he was speaking louder than he thought he was speaking. So he was talking to this girlfriend of his, and he was saying, "It's time for you to learn how we're going to do this." And I was like, okay. And I could see that he kept looking over at me, and he says, "I'm going to distract him, and you have to go around, and you're just going to take something from him." I'm like thinking, "You stupid idiot, I can hear you." So he comes up, and he's like, "Hey, man, where are you from?" I'm like, "I'm from South Africa." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, sports, this and that." And meanwhile, his girlfriend's trying to clumsily sneak around the crowd. And I just said, "Dude, just piss off. I can see your girlfriend. I can see you, what you're trying to do here. Just take a hike," and kind of stopped it in its tracks. But, that was an idiot. Those are a couple of funny stories. Let's get back to the serious stuff. Okay, so back to the serious stuff. I stopped that German guy from getting his stuff stolen. But another thing you have to understand here is that the pickpockets and the thieves are incredibly adept at getting stuff out of backpacks. So you'll actually notice if you walk around here in public, people wear their backpacks, in front. So it should be called front packs. And the reason for this is if you've got it on your back, especially in crowded areas, it's very easy when people are jostling about you for them to like unzip something and just kind of reach in and take something out of your backpack. So my advice to you is, if you're in any kind of crowded area here in China, do like the locals do, flip it around, keep your backpack on the front. Or if you've got one of those sort of man bags or whatever, slide it to the front, make sure that you can always keep your eye on it. And also be aware of your side pockets, because side pockets are, of course, a favorite target for these thieves. I've stopped at least 2 or 3 attempts I've seen on the streets here in China. The one story I like to tell a lot is I was walking to work, and there was a young lady walking towards me like this, and right behind her I could see a thief with those medical tweezers, because they sometimes use chopsticks, but most of the time they use these very long sort of medical tweezers. And he had them in her pocket, and he was busy pulling her cell phone out of her side pocket. And I just shouted in Chinese, "Shao Tou," which means thief. And she got a shock, and she turned around, and he kind of stepped back, and he was caught out, so he quickly, nonchalantly put his tweezers away and walked off into the distance. Of course, I didn't confront him. I didn't try to chase him. And I'm going to explain to you right now, well, when I say didn't confront him, I didn't go like run after him and try to do something. I'm going to explain to you the best way to confront a thief in China, and from my own experience, of course, and what you should watch out for. And actually, this could be applied to pretty much all over the world. I've got a story which I'm going to start with, in fact, my American trip. I'm going to tell you guys about how I got my GoPro stolen and retrieved it in America. What happened was, I had this idea that I would, every state that I went through, because I went through a lot of America during this last trip, 10,000 miles from west to east and back to west again, and I kind of went up and around and down, so I didn't really go through the same place twice. And I thought that I would get a sunrise in every single state that I went through. This was my idea. But of course it turned out to not be very practical, because when you're staying, especially I was staying with patrons along the way, not all the time, I did stay in hotels, but most of the time I was staying with patrons. And it's difficult to sneak out of the house at 5 a.m. to go set up your shot and do a time lapse of the sunrise. So I got about 3 or 4 of these time lapses. And in fact, I decided, this was kind of like a test one. I was in Tucson in Arizona. And there's this really nice little lake out near where I was staying. And people go and walk their dogs around there and whatnot. Fairly safe place. So I drove there early in the morning, sort of before 6 or whenever. It was still dark. And I parked my car, took out my GoPro. It's got kind of a little tripod thing. And I set it up on a park bench overlooking this lake. So I thought, this will be great. I'll get the sun rising up over the lake, because I'd, worked out where the sun was going to come from and everything. And I thought, this is going to be awesome. And I went and I sat in my car, which was about, 3 meters away from where the camera was. I could literally just straight out of my car, I could see the bench and the GoPro. So I was keeping my eye on it. And these time lapses take time. I think, take about half an hour or so to get a good time lapse. So I'm just sitting in the car and I'm messing around with my phone and stuff. And I notice, a couple of people walking past, some people walking their dogs, and they take notice of the GoPro and they go and they maybe like look, see what it is. And then they're like, oh, cool, someone's taking a photo. Because it's on, obviously. You can see it's recording. It's got a flashing light and everything. And they just kind of walk past and carry on their way. But I'm keeping my eye on this thing the whole time. Then this this kind of homeless looking guy, although, I could be misjudging him. He could have just been a bit scruffy. He walks past and he's been fishing, right? And he's got his little tackle box and everything, and he's walking past, and he goes up, he looks at it, picks it up. He literally picks it up, looks at it. You can see from the footage. He looks straight at it, puts it in his tackle box and walks off. So, I very quickly exit my car and I go up to him and I'm like, hey mate, can I have my camera back? And he's like, oh, well, what camera? What are you talking about? And I said, no, my camera that you just took. And he's like, this, and he opens up his tackle box. He's like, I found this in the trash. And I was like, no, you didn't. See that car over there? I was in the car. I was watching. That's my camera. I was busy taking a sunrise. I saw you take it and put it in your tackle box. And he's like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. Here you go. And he gave it back to me. Now, I told this story. I mean, I basically I got the camera back and I was like, all right, cheers, bye, and went back and I was like, thanks for ruining my shot, you piece of you annoying geezer, because it would have been a really good shot if he hadn't gone and stuck his ugly mug in it. Anyway, I told this story later to other people that I met along the way and stuff, and everybody was saying like, why didn't you call the cops? You should have called the cops. And from my point of view, there's no point. Like, why call the cops? The guy saw an opportunity, he took it. Yes, he did something he shouldn't have done. And he could obviously see that it wasn't just abandoned there. It was on. The lights were flashing. It was doing something, right? I mean, it's common sense. But the thing is, if I were to have called the cops, it really would have just been a drawn-out, long process. It would have ruined his day, ruined my day, and probably caused a lot of trouble for the guy where he just made a little mistake. And let's be honest, I was keeping an eye on it. I got it back. I didn't lose anything. If he had tried to push that he'd found it in the trash or something, and if he'd tried to run away with it or something, that's a different story. But I got it straight back. So as far as I'm concerned, no harm, no foul. Let him go on his way. And I have the same idea towards thieves in general. If they are trying to maliciously steal something and they're really putting a lot of time and effort into it, that's a different story. But if it's just a little crime of opportunity, a little, I'll just take that because it's their type thing. Yeah, what's the point? Just let them on their way. But now I need to warn you guys about thieves in China. Okay, thieves in China, there's a reason why people don't mess with them, and that's because they're organized. Okay, they are little gangs. Okay, these little pickpocket gangs, they're all over the place, and they have people that are looking out for the thieves and marking targets and telling the other people like, you go here, you take that guy out, etc., etc. And because they've got these gangs, Chinese local people are incredibly afraid of thieves, and that's why they very often don't stand up to them. And so, for instance, when I stopped that thief stealing the cell phone out of that girl's pocket, it was an incredibly crowded place. There were people everywhere. And I couldn't have been the only one who spotted it. But the thing is, the local people who spotted it just definitely, without a doubt, didn't intervene on purpose because they are afraid of causing trouble or harm to themselves. Because it's true, if you try to interfere with gangs of thieves here, very often you could get yourself stabbed or you can get yourself into trouble. But me being a foreigner gives me that little bit of extra freedom that local people don't have, because thieves are going to think more than twice before attacking a foreigner, because if they do that, then they're really going to get into trouble, because they will sort of lose face for China, and then the Chinese police will definitely get involved and really do their job. But if a local person gets injured, of course, there's going to be less attention, less media attention, and so it's less likely going to be any kind of repercussion towards a thief, and the person who gets themselves in danger by helping out is just really going to end up harming themselves. So that's why you might be flabbergasted if you watch footage of thieves here, and if you see it in real life like I have a couple of times, that local people don't tend to help. And that's simply because they're too worried about getting themselves injured. And it does happen, people get attacked by thieves, and they do get killed. It does happen here. But me being a foreigner and me being a little bit, I think bravado might be the right word. I'm not always very rational when it comes to things like this. I do sometimes just, go out there and do things, and I'm a bit impulsive, and there's no way that I'm going to let a thief get away with something if I can see it. I don't give a crap about the repercussions, and I'll deal with them if they come. That's just my personality. So for me, if I see a thief, I definitely step in, and I have a bunch of times. And my Chinese friends are always furious with me, and they're like, what are you doing? Don't interfere with the thieves. They're going to stab you, they're going to kill you, they're going to hurt you, you're going to get into trouble. And I appreciate their concern, but you know what, take a hike, because if I see a thief, I'm going to stop them anyway. Sorry. So, anyway, my philosophy for confronting thieves is this. If they are, like I said, and I've seen here plenty of times, just doing a little opportunistic grab at a wallet or a phone or something, I'll stop them, but it'll be more like a, hey, what do you think you're doing type thing. And if they let it go and they disappear, that's that. You know, you've kind of given them a little warning, and you don't need to take it any further. And that's probably the best way to approach thieves here in China. If you try to chase them down, try to physically restrain them or hurt them, that's when you're probably going to get into a world of hurt. And number one, the first thing you should know about China is if you try to restrain a thief, especially if you can't speak Chinese and if you're a foreigner like me, that thief will immediately, most probably, start shouting something about, help me, this foreigner is attacking me, and then without any rationale, the crowds around you will immediately start attacking you. And this has happened before in China. There's a Brazilian guy who got beaten up by a crowd because he stopped a thief, and the thief shouted, this foreigner is, you know, hurting me or something. So the crowd beat the Brazilian guy up when he was actually trying to help a lady whose purse had been snatched. And in fact, the lady was even there telling them to stop, he's helped me, but the crowd still beat up this foreigner. So you've got to understand there's this just terrible mob mentality, sort of nationalist, irrational ultra-nationalism here in China. So that's why I say don't try to restrain the thief, don't try to physically hurt them if you're by yourself, because you could get yourself into that sticky situation. And on top of that, if you start doing anything physical towards this thief, you are most likely going to get retaliation from his gang members who are kind of probably around you in the crowd somewhere, so be very careful. So yes, if a thief does try to take your stuff, I would, you know, like swat him away, grab his hand, take your thing back, that kind of thing, but don't, you know, once you've got your stuff back, leave it at that. My advice is don't try to take it further, because you could get yourself into a lot of trouble over here in China. Anyway, that's my advice to you as far as thieves are concerned. So take away from this video, guys, be aware in crowded places here in China. There are lots of pickpockets, there are lots of thieves. They're organized thieves, just like the beggar gangs here. You've got gangs of thieves. In fact, they're very often tied together. And you'll have little beggar children distract you while the thieves come and steal stuff, you know, that kind of thing. It's pretty terrible, but it's indicative of developing countries. You get it in other countries like India and South Africa and any other developing country in the world. You'll find this kind of thing, but they've got it down to a fine art here in China. Pickpocketing is, it's probably the one thing that will affect you crime-wise if you come to China. That and scams. So be very aware in public spaces. Make sure that your valuables are deep down in your bag. Like if you've got a back hidden pocket or something, make sure they're deep down. You've got your eye on them all the time, because the last thing you want to do is lose your passport or something. And it's happened to a friend of mine where thieves actually stole his bag. He was walking with one of these sort of strap bags, you know, and a thief ran past, cut the strap and ran away with his bag. And because he had his personal info in the bag, they phoned him and basically ransomed his passport back to him. It was quite funny. He got his passport back, but obviously nothing else. And he was at the mercy of these thieves because he needed his passport. Yeah, anyway. I've been waffling on about this, and it's maybe because I'm half sick, but I hope you've taken something away from this video that you can find helpful if you travel here. China is a very safe place. I got a video all about safety here. And in general, you'll be having a fantastic time if you come and visit here. But be aware that theft is a big problem in China, theft and scams. And that's why I make these videos. It's not to deter you from coming to China. It's to prepare you to have a better time when you come here. Because these scumbags, you know, these scammers and these thieves, they ruin it for everybody. They ruin it for all the good people. Because there's so many nice, hospitable people here. You know, it's such an incredible country to visit, and although it looks, especially on my videos, that I focus on a lot of negative things, the reason why I'm doing this is to prepare you so that you can avoid these negative things and enjoy the positive things, because that's why I still live here in China. That's why I came to China, is because there's a lot of interesting and good things here in China, and the good far outweighs the bad, but you have to be aware of the bad. You need to know that the snake is poisonous. If there's a poisonous snake and you don't know it's poisonous and you go over and try to pick it up, you can get bitten and die. But if you know it's poisonous, you know to avoid it. And that's what these videos are about. Huge shout out to everybody who supports me. You guys, you know, people part of the serpentza thing. Thank you so much. This flag, as all of you know, when I went to America, all these names on here, these are people, my subscribers that I met as I traveled across America. You guys are the reason I make these videos. Thank you so much again. And guys, you know the drill. No matter who you are, no matter where you are, as always, stay away from thieves and stay awesome.